time. Let's do it.
All right, cool. So,
Oh, no, thank you.
all right.
I love the studio, man. This is nice.
This joint is nice.
So-
Yeah.
Yo, how much
Very
it
nice.
cost to come in here?
It all depends. If it's just a person, one person, basically like 155 a month.
A month?
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
Train. That's reasonable. You
You
got
ready?
I'm not saying it's
Yeah.
not.
We're ready.
Is it?
All right. So, first thing, just please
I'm doing something
introduce
new.
yourselves and let us know where you guys are from.
Okay. Okay, right now?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's do it. I'm Kenny J. I'm from
J.
SouthSide Jamaica, Queens.
And I'm Junebug, DJ Junebug from the legendary group Phase 3. I'm from Southside Jamaica, Queens as well.
Nice. What can you guys remember about your childhood growing up in Jamaica, Queens? Kind of what was it like? What was the neighborhood like? What do you remember?
One thing I remember that's clear is that, all the kids used to come outside and be together. We basically had this center that they would put on in a hole in the wall on the side of the building, and it was called the Originals of Jamaica. And basically that's where all the neighborhood kids were going from the south side. No matter where you're from the south side, that's where you would go. They would teach African dance.
Yep.
It was some place for the kids to go instead of being on the street. And that's where we used to go.
Yes.
You remember that?
I definitely remember the Originals of Jamaica.
Diane Glover.
That's right. It was a sister named Diane Glover and a brother named Ronald Kennard,
Ronald Kennard.
who
yes.
originated out of the Bernice Johnson Dance Studio, which was also another organization that formed in South Jamaica, Queens, that was dedicated towards passing the arts and the expertise of dance art on to disadvantaged children in the community. Bernice Johnson actually danced on Broadway, and so she brought a lot of her talents and her energies back to the neighborhood.
Yes.
Is that how you got familiar with a lot of music from being in that organization?
I would say yes. Basically, Junebug, he's always been around music because his uncle is the legendary Brooke Benton, Rainy Night in Georgia, and his father was an original Ink Spot, which is a 50s, 60s doo-wop group. But as far as music goes, as soon as I moved to Jamaica, Queens from Brooklyn, I'm originally from Brooklyn, he and I would go down to the Originals of Jamaica, and they had a group in there already that had just basically got together. So we would look at them and try to emulate them, and their name was Decipher Sound. Now we basically was brought up with them, and they made us love music. To be honest with you, that's the truth.
Wow. Nice.
Okay, as far as my past with music is concerned, as he said, my uncle was the legendary Brooke Benton, and my father was the former Ink Spot. And on my mother's side, her sisters sang, her brothers sang, my grandmother, my grandfather sang. And when we were young, we used to take trips to South Carolina. And all of the mothers and sisters and brothers would all bring their children down south at the same time in the summer to leave them. But in the midst of that, everybody would gather in my grandmother and grandfather's living room. And everybody would sit, all of the elders, the mothers, the sisters and brothers, would sit around the couch, and their children would sit at their lap. And we spent our time singing old gospels.
Right. Wow.
I didn't know that. That's all right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, my history with music goes back that far.
So where did you get the inspiration to start playing with turntables?
Well, as Kenny J mentioned, we always had a love and a passion for music, but there was this one group in the community named Cypher Sounds, who I would say pretty much got a head start on us. They started around 75, 74 as well. We went to the Originals of Jamaica Center one day, and we saw them performing for a party, I believe it was. And at the time, they had what we used to call column speakers. They were speakers that the bands used to use. And then they had a big column brain sitting on the side of the table. And then they had their turntables, and it's like, as I said, we had a passion for music. So they inspired us to put together a set and pretty much do the same thing.
we couldn't be on the same level as them, obviously. So we had to start out with what we have. So we come from humble beginnings, I'm gonna be honest with you. So we saw 2 end tables in the trash. We go to the end tables, get the end tables, and he would put together speakers, 2 speakers. Then we would take whatever we had in our house, in our home, and bring it, that was like musically inclined, right? And bring it out, and we would play outside in front of a church, because there was a church on our block. And that's when we became Phase 3, right then and there. We decided that.
And when he says what we would, the things that we would take out of our house, for instance, back then they used to have what they call component sets, where they would have a turntable, and then they would have an integrated stereo that you could play tapes through. You could play the radios too. It was all in one. So, say for instance, I would have one in my house, he would have one in his house, and we would bring it out and put the 2 together. And then, and that's how we actually ended up. Those were our 2 turntables. I put it that way. Those are our 2 turntables and our set in the beginning.
Yep. And we ain't have no money, so it's like 14, 15. We get our allowance. We go buy records.
Were you going to, were there jams like in parks and stuff, or were you going out to see groups perform? You mentioned Cypher Sound, but were there other-
Basically back then, there were really no other groups around in SouthSide Jamaica, Queens that we knew about. Basically, when it started out as us and Sound Experience, right?
That's right.
So it was another group called Sound Experience, and we formed together. So once we formed together, we started putting speakers together. They had the turntables and the mixer. We had the speakers, so we just come together and we would do shows that way.
Nice. So what were some of the things that you were doing that, to get your name out there, or that people were noticing you for?
Your answer or mine?
I'll
answer.
Once you came together,
Yeah.
what happened?
We basically would stay in the parks. We would stay in the parks. 160 is an elementary school in Southside Jamaica, Queens. We would go to 48, PS 48. That's another elementary school in Southside Jamaica, Queens. And we would play in the parks. And everybody would have, there would be nothing for us to do. There's so many kids in the neighborhood, everybody used to have to go outside. There was no Xbox or PlayStation. So you had to be back home when the lights came on. So we would come just before the lights came on and start playing music. Everybody got in trouble after that because we ain't leave till about, what, 11?
That's right.
Something like that. You want to add to that?
No, I'll leave that.
Okay.
Were you plugging in the equipment to like the light pole?
Well, that's another funny part. I'll touch on that one.
Go ahead.
The light pole was the main source of electricity. Once we found out that you could actually open up the panel on the light post on the outside, and that you would only need it was almost like a fuse that you would twist into the socket inside of it, and the fuse was made up where it would have a socket plug on it where you could plug an electricity outlet or plug into it. And once we found that out, we would go to the park, open up the light post at the bottom, plug into it, and we play as long as we could play.
Nice. What do you think were some of the bigger highlights that you guys got recognized for after playing in the parks?
The battles. We would battle various DJ crews. And I have the proof, as far as flyers are concerned from way back then. And that's the way we would get our recognition. We were the only ones that would go into the park. I mean, Cypher Sound would go every now and then. Infinity Machine they probably, I don't even remember the last time they went to the park. But as far as us, we stayed in the parks. We have a park called Lincoln Park that's on the side of Van Wyck Expressway that we used to stay in. Ajax Park, which is also on the side of Van Wyck Expressway. We also went to Van Wyck Park, which is our home park, and that was on the side of the Van Wyck Expressway as well. So every time we would play, everybody would flock to the park to see us, and I think that's where we got our notoriety. Then you have various clubs that was in the neighborhood, where when I look at the flyers, it was only $2 to get in. I still can't believe that. $2 to get in, now they charge $20 to get in. But the various places around here were the Fantasia, which was on Merrick Boulevard. You had the Le Chalet, which was off of Hillside Avenue. You had the Club Encore, which used to be the Rustic Room by the Queens Library across the street from the bus terminal in Jamaica, right off of Jamaica Avenue. And you had the Club Gemini that you go in, and that's where we would go. We would go to those different places, and that's how we got notarized.
And also to add to how we became known, we had a different style from everyone. Everybody in South Jamaica, Queens that DJ, they all had their own unique style when it came to playing music. A part of phase 3 was that when we would go to park jams, club jams, initially what we would do is we would start off with calm music that people could just come in and kind of tap their feet to and kind of talk to each other about, etc., etc. And kind of get warmed up. We warmed up the crowd with music like, say, for instance, There Ain't No Love Thing. Back Together Again by Roberta Flack and Donny Hathaway. Songs like that. And then the second part of our performance was to play maybe disco beats, rhythms like that. And then we would end what we did with what they call now hip-hop. We call it rap at that particular time. But our style of music, the way that we blend records, the way that we scratch records, the way that we faded records, the way that we cut records, these are all different styles of mixing or DJing, you know, and we had a way with mixing records using those different styles that enticed the crowd.
Do you remember